I'll record on mic. All right. Well, it is wonderful to be here with y'all today. Oh, goodness. Where did that come from? Is that me? Did you all hear? Is that me?
I think someone might not be on mute, maybe.
Or, well, I'm hearing an echo on myself. So is it better now?
Yep, you sound fine to me, Lisa.
Okay, good. All right, because that was loud. All right, so I am Lisa Hammett, and a little bit about my background. Back in 2005, I reached burnout after 26 years in the corporate retail sector. And I know a number of you had kind of piped in and said that you have experienced a version of burnout. So you can attest it is a terrible place to be. Some of my symptoms and what my life looked like at the time was, one, I was 65 pounds overweight. I was suffering from chronic migraines and digestive problems. I had so many different pills I was taking just to manage stress. It was awful. And I don't even like taking pills. So I'm just telling you, it was a terrible, terrible place to be. And my marriage, had been recently married, and it was just a really, really stressful time. So I share that just to say that, unfortunately, a lot of these symptoms can occur when we reach burnout. And what I ended up doing is exiting a long-term career at a high-paying salary without an exit strategy, which I do not recommend. It is not a good thing to do. And when we allow ourselves, even if it's not intentionally, to get to that point, we often make a very drastic decision that has serious impact in our life. So I am going to, share my screen. And please, everybody, confirm. Can you all see this? Okay. Fantastic. All right. So I would love to hear, have any of you ever heard of mental fitness before? Nobody? All right. Well, this will be interesting then. I'm excited to share this information with you. So mental fitness, I'll tell you the definition here in a little bit, but really what we're talking about today is how do we prevent burnout by developing mental fitness? So let's get started. I'd like to start by just talking about some of the causes, and you're probably going to relate to a lot of these. I picked work related because we're all in the work space, obviously. So I'm sure some of these will resonate with you. Burnout is basically of a result of chronic stress that is not managed. And chronic stress can come from a lot of different factors in a corporate setting, such as an unrealistic workload. And I know some of you had already mentioned that. You know, whether it's you're having a challenging time finding the right candidates, maybe your company reorged, maybe your, God forbid, turnover is high. If you're doing the job of multiple people, it is incredibly stressful. Perceived lack of control. That is another one that can be very challenging as well. And I'm sure at some point, you felt like, wow, there's so many balls in the air and I just can't seem to control what's going on. Again, not a good place to be in. A minimal or no reward for performance. If you ever worked really hard at an organization, put in a lot of time and effort, and either were not financially compensated for it, but really in many cases, it's just no appreciation whatsoever. And you just kind of feel like you're spinning your wheels and you're like, why am I putting forth all this effort for not any type of recognition? Which ties into feeling underappreciated, feeling unqualified. When we start a new position or we go into a new company, we can definitely kind of feel like a fish out of water. And studies have shown that it can take a good 6 months before we actually really feel confident in our job. Even if we are skilled in what we do, it takes about 6 months to really feel like we can manage everything. And then the last one, and I can't tell you how often I see this, is a misalignment with values. And what I mean by that is you might be very skilled at what you do and you might love what you do, but if the organization you're working for is not in alignment with your values, you're going to feel like you're just doing it for nothing and almost kind of like an imposter. So as a result, you feel overwhelmed by these things, out of control, underappreciated, unworthy, insecure, and misunderstood. And these, again, can lead to burnout. Now, this is all work related. Can anybody share for me, and you'll have to answer because I can't see the chat with my full screen here, but can somebody just shout out for me, what are maybe some of the personal reasons that could cause burnout?
Parenting, especially
Parenting.
of
Yes.
young ones.
Oh, that's
Mine are older now, but yeah, young ones, that can easily happen.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Taking care of an elderly parent.
Oh, definitely. I can attest to that.
Illness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, illness can really cause a lot of stress, especially if it's really debilitating and involves financial hardship.
The inability to say no, the say yesers that say yes to everything.
Oh, yes, I understand. I used to be one of those people. I'm sure you're not alone. I know you're not alone. Yeah, I do a whole nother conversation on setting boundaries and learning to say no, because it is such a common thing. All right, so those are all really great examples. So as you can see, burnout can be caused from all areas of life. So how does mental fitness really come into this? And what is mental fitness? So by definition, mental fitness is your capacity to respond to those challenges with a positive rather than a negative mindset. So we're going to kind of take a deep dive into the brain today. And I think you will find it interesting because you're going to start to recognize some behaviors that you may have that, and then understand kind of where they come from. So the impact of mental fitness is peak performance. We all want to perform at a high level. Peace of mind and wellness. So having great health and being calm. And healthy relationships. And this can pertain to work as well as to personal. So lots of great benefits for mental fitness. All right, so the research foundation on this, and there is extensive research on this, and the brainchild behind this is Shirzad Chamine, and he's a PhD out of Stanford University. He teaches graduate students, and his research led to discoveries incorporating positive psychology, performance science, neuroscience, and cognitive behavioral psychology. Now that's a mouthful. And at the center of all of that is positive intelligence. So extensive scientific research just to build some credibility for positive intelligence. Now, the research subjects included hundreds of CEOs and their executive teams, Stanford graduate students, world-class athletes, 500,000 participants from 50 countries, and many YPO families and forums. Now, if you like to read, I highly encourage you to pick up his book entitled Positive Intelligence. I picked it up during the pandemic, and I will tell you, it was the #1 book on the New York Times bestselling list, I think, for almost 12 months. It's incredible. And for somebody who is so intelligent and it's based on so much scientific research, you're probably thinking, oh yeah, that's going to be a snooze fest and it's going to put me to sleep. No, it's written at like a 6th or 7th grade reading level. And there's so many stories and examples in it that you will really start to resonate with a lot of what is shared. And Shirzad goes into more extensive detail on the research. So if you like science, it's a good place. Okay, so results from his factor analysis. There are 3 core muscles at the root of mental fitness. The saboteur interceptor. I'm going to explain all of these. So if you're going, what the heck is that? I'll share that. The sage and the self-command. So we're going to talk about those 3 core muscles. Now, I mentioned to you that this is the study really of how our brains work. So a little bit about our brain. We have our left and we have the right side of our brain. So our left side of our brain, our left analytical brain, is very important for problem solving. But did you know that it was designed to really only handle one problem at a time? And where we get into trouble is the whole multitasking functionality. So I'm going to date myself here, but if you remember back, if you were around in like the mid 80s, and there was that term multitasking, and when you were looking for candidates to hire, they had to be great at multitasking. Does that ring a bell? Yeah, see some heads nodding. Well, the thing about multitasking is you end up doing nothing well. But at the time, there was this perception that, oh my gosh, if somebody is a great multitasker, they're going to be so much more productive and they'll just be a much better employee. Well, that's not the case. And in fact, a lot of the stressors that we face are a result of trying to do too much at the same time and getting overwhelmed and then not doing anything well. So that is the left brain. And in fact, interesting fun fact, multitasking was actually created by IBM, the computer giant, to handle back office applications, to run multiple applications at the same time in the background while you run your computer. So for better functionality. It was not even designed for humans. So all those negative emotions that come up in our left brain, and we're going to go through those. From the positive intelligence standpoint, we name them and we call them saboteurs, and there are 10 of them. So that's where that term comes from. We're going to go in detail, and I guarantee you will identify with some or many of them. And then the right brain is our right happy brain. And you may have heard, oh, it's your artistic brain, your creative brain. Well, your right brain is where all your positive emotions come from. It's your clear-headed focus, looking at the big picture. It's really the space that we want to swim most of the time. But oftentimes we get hijacked by our left brain and it causes a lot of problems. So let's go into those saboteurs. And again, they're those negative emotions that bubble up from our left brain. And at the beginning of, or I should say, overruling all of your saboteurs is the judge. Now, Shirzad calls his the executioner because his judge, when he was growing up, was so harsh. And the judge not only judges you, but judges others. So if you ever had those negative thought patterns where you did something and you're like, okay, that was stupid. Why did I do something so stupid? I know better. Or you're working towards a goal and you get stuck in a challenge and you're like, I can't do this. I can't do this. Or in terms maybe of weight loss. Oh, I'll never lose weight. Whatever it is, all that negative crap that we tell ourselves. And by the way, what we tell ourselves is not truth. It's not truthful. We conjure up a lot of lies in our brain, unfortunately, but that is the judge. Now, judging others, how many of y'all have gotten cut off on the freeway? Somebody just, or backs into you and you're shouting expletives saying, you stupid idiot, you don't know how to drive, blah, 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 whatever. Okay, that's an example. Or if you're out at a restaurant or in a public place and a poor parent has 2 children that are having tantrums and they're just screaming at the top of their lungs, and the parents may be trying very hard to control them or not, but you're thinking in your brain, can't you just control your child? They're making so much noise. So again, judgmental, unhelpful thoughts. Okay, so that might relate. Now, the judge has a lot of accomplices, and this is where I think you're going to start to kind of resonate with some of these. Now, I must say that each of these accomplices stem from a positive trait, and I'll explain what I mean. So if any of these resonate with you, know that at the root cause of it, there's good, okay? So the controller, for example, as you know, being in the workspace, you have to have control over certain tasks or projects, especially if they involve multiple people. You can't just say, oh, just go out there and just do whatever the heck you want. Doesn't work. So there has to be some sort of control. So that's not a bad trait. But the lie that the controller says is that if I am not in control and have my hands on every single piece of this, then it's going to fail. I have to be in control for this project to be successful. Anybody kind of resonating? So that is the controller. And have you ever worked for somebody who's a micromanager? What are some traits of a micromanager? Just shout them out.
We question everything, every step of the process.
Exactly. And how does that make you feel, Stacy?
Not good, and it's disruptive.
Mhm. It could make you feel like you're losing confidence because, well, why are they questioning everything that I'm doing? Or they hired me for a certain job. Why can't I do my job? So resentment. So that's the controller gone to the extreme. The hyperachiever. So this is one of my saboteurs. And if you're thinking kind of, well, how do I determine what my top saboteurs are? At the end of this, I'm going to put in the chat a link to an assessment which you can take so you can see your top saboteurs. So the hyperachiever, good positive traits are very focused on goal achievement, personal development, very motivated to do well. Those are all really great qualities, especially of employees that you hire. The problem is, gone to the extreme, it's you never take the time to celebrate your success, and you never really truly look at something as success because you're always looking for the next thing that you have to do. Hyperachievers are very task focused. Their self-worth often is based on their productivity. And if they feel like they're not being productive, they feel like they're a failure or are not having a good day. And this is something that I struggled with a lot because I love writing lists. And it's taken me years to really overcome this. And I'm not saying I'm perfect, but that is the hyperachiever. The restless. So you may know somebody in your life. They're very interesting. They're well-traveled, well-read. They have their hands in a lot of different things. And they're fun to be around because they do so many different things. The problem is, or the lie that the restless person tells you is, well, you know, things start to get boring, so I'm just not going to finish them. When in actuality, they don't finish them because things get hard. And we all know that life happens, right? It gets hard sometimes. And So the mentality of the restless is, oh, the grass is always greener. This is boring. Let's move on to something more exciting, which, as we know, we can't always do. We have to finish tasks that can be uncomfortable. The stickler. So the stickler is really great at attention to detail. And this is a great thing, especially if you're in a highly detailed profession. If you're in compliance, obviously attention to detail is very important when you're focusing on that. If you're a medical doctor, if you're a CPA, if an engineer, very important. But the problem is they have no flexibility. So what happens is it's black or it's white, and there's no flexibility. And as we know, life can happen, and sometimes we have to be flexible. So somebody who is constantly saying, no, we have to do it this way. It has to be done this way. And that's the lie that their saboteur is telling them. That's not true. The pleaser, which, Melissa, I think you had alluded to this earlier, and this happens to be one of mine as well, is the pleaser can take two forms. So the pleaser could be that individual, well, first of all, good qualities, empathy, vulnerability, truly cares for other people, amazing traits. They're, from a relationship standpoint and communication, all exceptional qualities. The problem is it can be taken to the extreme, and the pleaser could then put their needs last because they're always focusing on somebody else's needs. And after a while, they start to feel like, well, I guess I'm not important. And then it becomes resentful and not a good situation. Now, the pleaser can also be the individual that tries to keep a group of people kind of even keel, always wants people to be happy. Well, that is kind of me, and they do not like toxicity or drama. Neither one of those is one of my fan favorites, and I try to avoid it like the plague. And sometimes it involves difficult conversations because we are trying to avoid toxicity or sharing of certain things that might be termed, oh, dramatic. But the problem is, as we know, especially in the HR space, that we have to have tough conversations, even if we don't want them. We have to have them. And that is kind of where the pleaser can fall, and why the pleaser can be so closely aligned to the avoider. And the avoider, well, it's great to avoid things that can cause serious harm. It's great to be cautious, but when you're avoiding difficult conversations, relationships can fail, projects can fall apart. You have to be able to have difficult conversations. And that is a problem with the avoider. The hypervigilant. So really positive trait with a hypervigilant is very self-aware. It's great to be self-aware and to understand your emotions and to be very aware of your surroundings, very present. And it's okay to be cautious because there are certain things that might be harmful. But when taken to the extreme, the hypervigilant is always worried, waiting for the shoe to drop. Oh my gosh, this could happen. Oh, I'm going to get sick. Oh, our business is going to go under. Oh, whatever it is. So that's not a good thing. And again, it's a lie that the saboteur tells them. The victim, kind of in alignment with that, again, self-awareness is very important, but the victim takes it to the extreme by woe is me, in order to get attention. And they may not intentionally be doing this, but in order to get attention, they always talk about, oh gosh, things are so hard for me. Oh, if bad things are going to happen, it's going to happen to me. They're very negative. And lastly, the hyper-rational. Now, the hyper-rational is bright, very intelligent, could be successful. Again, from the standpoint, could be a doctor, engineer, somebody who is very left brain dominant. But the thing is they are so task driven that they have no time for empathy or any other kind of emotion. and they suck at communication. I'm just going to put it out there. They really suck at communication. And, that's why often you hear of people in the medical profession may have high divorce rates because they are super hyper rational and they're so task focused and they lack empathy. So I would like to hear, and you don't have to go into elaborate detail, but what of these saboteurs are resonating with you? What is one or two that maybe speaks to you?
I'm definitely the pleaser. I tend to not say no to things, and no matter what my workload is, I want to be the problem solver. I notice that at home and at work. So I tend to, always want to please everybody and never say no to anything, no matter what it means.
And what does that end up doing for you?
It's frustrating for me personally because I feel like that I don't put my full attention to something because I'm rushing through it, or I've got 5 other things that are waiting for my attention.
Yes. Oh, yes. Anybody else?
I think I'm a little bit of the pleaser and the hyperachiever.
Yeah, they do go hand in hand in a lot of ways.
I would say I'm also a little bit of the pleaser and the hyperachiever as well.
Okay. Yeah. Can you recognize maybe traits in others where they might have a strong saboteur? And it's interesting because once we start not only becoming more self-aware of how we're being hijacked by these emotions, but how others are, then we can recognize that, okay, so really a hyper-rational person is not insensitive and doesn't care about people. It's just they're so focused on tasks that it might be difficult for them to really show empathy and emotion. So it's kind of learning how to interact with other people. So that's our saboteurs. And our sage, again, as I had mentioned previously, is where we want to be swimming. And we have positive characteristics of the sage that we will talk about here. So again, the saboteurs motivate you through negative emotions. Oh, it has to be hard in order for it to be successful. For you to be successful, it has to be hard, or it has to be done this way, or you have to always put others' needs ahead of yourself, or always say yes. Whereas in the sage perspective, it motivates you through positive emotions, which is empathy, clear-headed focus, curiosity. Here are some of them. So the negative emotions, again, could be fear, stress, anger, guilt, shame, insecurity, you name it. And then the positive sage characteristics are empathy, curiosity, creativity, passion, and purpose. So under the saboteur mindset, it's things have to be hard in order for you to be successful or for things to be accomplished. So you can be successful in the sense that maybe you're achieving goals, but ultimately you're not happy. So if you really want to be happy and successful, then you need to be coming from the right brain perspective, which is your sage perspective. So I'd love to know, are negative emotions good for you? Is there a time when a negative emotion might be good for you? I'd love to hear.
You don't have them on the screen anymore, but I'm thinking fright.
And why might fright be good for you?
Because it causes you to react in certain situations to keep yourself safe, or am I overthinking it?
I don't know. What do you all think? It's a good comment.
Could be used as a motivator too. So depending on, I mean, you know, again, I think everyone on this call would agree. I'm probably a very hyper competitive person. I think you, Lisa, you probably see that as well. So, and everyone,
Oh, yes.
everyone knows who I am would agree with that. But, you know, I think you can use negative emotions as a powerful weapon. It just depends on, you know, I guess how you look at things. I mean, you can't just beat yourself up all day. It'll never work. I mean, you know, you just be in a constant, I think anxiety will creep in, but I think you can use it as a motivator at times to improve as well.
And that's true. But think about this. Is it sustainable when you use negative emotions to reinforce certain behavior? In the long term, is that sustainable?
No, I mean, no. I mean, I don't think anything's sustainable, but I think, you know, if you're looking for something, you know, motivation, you get a bad performance review, you know, whatever it might be, you know, again, you get a bad diagnosis of the doctor. I mean, you know, you've got to use some of that negativity to motivate yourself potentially to improve. Like, what can I do differently to improve my life? I mean, that's kind of the way I look at things as well. So.
And that is, I'm sorry, go ahead. Who was next?
I think it also,
That's what I was thinking too.
I think it also depends on the person and how they receive that emotion and how they receive that feedback. There are some people that will take that negative feedback and turn it into something positive and something as a motivator. There are other people that will receive that negative feedback and it will literally debilitate them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's kind of where we're going from this. So if you are just focused on the negative aspect on it and allowing yourself to debilitate yourself, basically, it's equating to putting your hand on a hot stove. Now, if there was a burner that was hot, you would not intentionally touch it. And you certainly would not keep your hand on it because you would seriously burn yourself. It would be incredibly painful. But when we stay hijacked by those negative emotions, that is in essence what you're doing. Think of it as putting a hand on a hot stove and keeping it there. So negative emotions are good. And this is kind of what some of you had shared, Matt, you were kind of going down this path, is it's important to recognize that, okay, so I'm having a negative emotion. I had a negative experience. Okay, it's helpful because I know now that I need to intercept that saboteur. I need to shift and look at it from a different perspective. But if you find that you're in that negative thought pattern for more than 2 seconds, then you have a saboteur hijacking. And staying in those negative emotions hurts your ability to see clearly, respond with empathy, curiosity, creativity, and laser-focused action, ultimately. So really negative emotions are just designed as like an alert. Like if you put an alert on your phone, you hear an alarm. Okay, I have a negative emotion. Okay, now I'm going to change it. And we're going to talk about how to go about doing that shortly. So the right brain, again, it's all of your positive emotions. Everything positive when you're happy, joyful, curious, focused. You ever feel like you're in the zone sometimes and just productivity is just flowing, or you're having a super engaged conversation with somebody and you just seem to really get each other? Or if you're a runner, you get that runner's high. That is your right brain. You are in your right brain, basically. And that is where you want to be. It's ease and flow. So peace and calm, clear-headed focus, creativity, and the big picture. And that's the sage perspective. So this is a different way that you can look at it as well. So here is the outcome. that you received. It was not a good outcome. Let's say you had that cancer diagnosis, or you got a horrible review, or whatever it was. Okay, yeah, that was kind of a wake-up call. However, from the sage perspective, there is always a gift and opportunity in the situation. So if you got that bad review, as Matt was sharing, and you used it, you really looked at the feedback and focused on, okay, this is good feedback and I can improve based on this feedback. And you do that, that is the gift and opportunity in the situation. Now, from a kind of a personal perspective, imagine, if you will, that you need to get to an important meeting. Could be at work, it could be wherever, it could be a doctor's appointment, whatever, but it is imperative that you get to this meeting, and you go out to your car and you have a flat tire. What's the thoughts that are going through your head?
Not me. Please, not me. Not today.
Right? This is bad. Oh my gosh, it could not have come at a worse time. I have to get to this meeting. It's terrible. Oh my gosh, all of this is not happening. What side of the brain are you swimming in?
Left.
Definitely the left side.
Exactly. And I'm not saying it's not challenging, especially if you really need to get to this important meeting. Okay, yeah, that's difficult. Okay. But what might be a gift and opportunity in this situation? I can see your brains working.
Gosh, the only thing that would come to my mind, I guess, and I don't know if this is what we're looking for, but like, you know, maybe thinking about leaving early the next time, or leaving myself enough time, you know, in case you run into issues like that.
Okay, so putting it in such a way that, okay, so there's a great learning from this, that I will allow myself more time in the future. So instead of telling yourself, oh gosh, this is stupid, I'm late, I'm blah, 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 it's like, okay, this is a good learning.
I mean, I would have said that probably to myself first, and then
Well,
had to come
we
with
all
some.
would, you know, and that's that 1 to 2 second.
You better do a good impression.
Yes. Well, an example could be also, okay, this is a little challenging because I really do need to be there. However, I could have gone out on the highway and had a blowout, and it could have either I could have gotten in an accident or I could have caused an accident. And that didn't happen. So it's just kind of looking at things from a different perspective. So which perspective is true or false? This is a really crappy situation. It's terrible. I'm late. Oh my gosh, this is horrible. Or this is a gift. What do you think's the right perspective?
It's a gift.
Yeah. And we don't often readily go to that. But the thing is, just like anything, the more you practice this shift in perspective, the stronger your neural pathway will be formed in your brain. And that's the thing with our brains, is when we repeat the same behavior over and over again, it strengthens that neural pathway, and then it just becomes second nature. So if we're constantly telling ourselves that things suck, life is hard, this is terrible, okay, those thoughts will create our belief system, which will in turn drive our behavior. But if we flip the switch and say, okay, yes, I'll admit it's challenging, but here's the positive. And we do that more often. That becomes our belief system, which drives our behavior. Does that make sense? All right. So again, whichever you believe becomes true. It's kind of that self-fulfilling prophecy. All right. So now we're getting into kind of the fun part of, okay, I've thrown a ton of information at you. You've kind of maybe thought about some characteristics that, okay, I might identify with certain saboteurs. But bottom line is, how do we apply mental fitness to actually intercept these saboteurs and shift to the sage perspective? Before I actually go into this, does anybody have any comments or questions about anything I shared? Because I know it's a lot of information. Okay. Again, you're going to have an assessment that I'll post at the end so you can actually see where you rate in this. So we have, think of these as micro meditations. They're called PQ reps in the positive intelligence space. And this is how we develop mental fitness. And PQ stands for positive intelligence quotient. Now I put the link to my TEDx on here because I actually walked the audience through a PQ exercise. And I'm going to do that with you here in a minute, but let me explain what I mean. So these they're actually 10 to 15 second micro meditations. They involve our senses. And what I mean is, I want you to look at something that is in your space immediately in front of you. Just zero in on something. I don't care what it is. And I want you to look at it so intently as if you're seeing that image or object for the first time, like you've never seen it before. And I want you to really focus on colors, shapes, textures. Is there a reflection in the surface? Really look at it intently. So that's an example of one way. Another way is you could focus on something that you can hear. Oftentimes starting with the most distant sound that you can hear, which could be maybe a passing car. If you're in an office space, it could be conversation in another room or another cubicle. It could be the sound of a fan or computer, all kinds of sounds, okay? But focusing in intently on the farthest sound and then shifting to your breath, which most often is the closest sound that you can hear. Really listening to what your breath sounds like when you inhale and then when you exhale. So that's how you could do something that you can hear. Next, you could do something that you can touch. And I want you to use kind of the same mentality on something that you can touch. So something in your space right in front of you. I want you to touch something, but I want you to touch it and not look at it. I want you to pretend that you've never felt this object before and you can't see it. And you're really using your fingers to feel this object. You know, notice shapes, textures. Is it cold? Is it warm? Is it room temperature? You know, does it have sharp corners? Does it have rounded corners? You get the idea. If you don't want to touch something in front of you, you could rub two fingertips together. And I do this often. If I start to feel like stressed, and it may sound silly, but it does work. And I'll tell you in a minute why it does. But you can zero in by just rubbing two fingertips together. And the cool thing about this is you can do this subtly in your pocket. So it's not like you're going up to somebody and doing this, you know, and they're thinking, okay, you're a weirdo. Why are you doing that? But you can feel your fingertip ridges. And again, are your fingertips dry? Are they smooth? What's the temperature of your fingertips? So what these 10 to 15 second micro meditations do is it actually quiets those negative thought patterns. So when we're hijacked by one of those saboteurs and we're feeling those negative emotions and we're having a hard time shifting, we start doing these things. Now equate it to having a whiteboard in front of you. Imagine that you have a whiteboard and it's just filled with a bunch of black marks. Like somebody took a black dry erase pen and just wrote a bunch of black scribble all over it. So as you are doing these PQ reps, you're taking an eraser and you're wiping off some of those marks. And the more you do these PQ reps, the more markings you wipe off. And before you know it, you're looking at a whiteboard in front of you that has no markings. So in essence, what this does is it kind of gets you to stop thinking in a sense. I mean, you're kind of thinking, but you're not. So then when you're in that space, you're more likely to then shift and focus on, okay, so what is the gift and opportunity in this situation? And focus on the positive. So what I'm going to do now, and I know we're kind of getting close on time, but I trust me, it's short. So if you would humor me and close your eyes. Now when you do these PQ reps, you don't have to close your eyes, but sometimes when you're just starting and learning how to do them, it helps you focus a little more. So this is something that you could do for yourself. So with your eyes closed, I'd like you to take a deep breath in through your nose. Hold it for 3 counts. And then exhale slowly through your mouth. And I'd like you to take another deep breath in through your nose. Hold it for 3 counts. And exhale slowly through your mouth. I want you to focus on how your body feels in your seat. If you're seated, how does it feel? What are the pressure points? Where are your legs hitting the chair? Maybe your back. How is it resting against the back of the chair? Where are your arms? Are they on armrests? Are they in your lap? And where are your fingers? Now, if you're standing, I want you to notice your feet on the floor and how your feet feel as you're standing on the floor. And whether you're standing or you're seated, I want you to imagine that your feet, underneath your feet, are growing tree roots. And I want you to imagine those tree roots spreading from your feet to all the corners of the floor. And before you know it, the entire floor is covered in tree roots. And then they start going up the wall, and then they meet overhead in the ceiling. How do your feet feel? Are they heavy? Wiggle your toes. How do your toes feel? Next, I want you to focus on something that you can hear. Now, it might be the tone and inflection in my voice. It could be something that you can hear in another room. But I want you to focus on something that you can hear. Focus intently on that sound. And now shift to the closest sound that you can hear, which is probably your breath. I want you to just focus on what it sounds like when you inhale, and then when you exhale slowly through your mouth. On your next inhalation, I want you to notice the temperature of the air as it enters your nose. And then as you exhale through your mouth, what's the temperature of that air? Take another deep breath in through your nose. Notice the temperature of the air. And exhale slowly through your mouth. Okay, you can open your eyes. Do you notice that you feel any different from when we started this exercise? Anybody?
I feel more relaxed.
Okay. More relaxed. Anybody feel any kind of different feeling? Did you notice that your mind wandered? If it
Yes.
did, yes. If it did, it's okay. Because in essence, this is a form of meditation. Now, we did this for 3 minutes, and you don't have to do it for 3 minutes. But if you're in a situation where you start to feel stressed or overwhelmed, can you see how this might help you to kind of ground you a little bit? Now, one thing to keep in mind, if you are triggered, and what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, you're having a conversation with somebody. It could be at work, it could be at home, wherever, and you are triggered. They're saying something that's either really irritating you, you're angry, they're upsetting you, whatever negative emotion is coming up for you, but you can feel it like a wall of heat just coming up in your body. And your first response, or what you want to do, is just kind of blurt out an answer and just retort and interrupt. Well, as we know, when we do that, often it does not have very favorable results. And especially in the workspace, we can't just barf a bunch of stuff on somebody. We just can't do that. We really have to focus. So how could you do this PQ process? What you could do is you could focus on something on that person's face. So maybe it's their nose. Really zero in on the shape of their nose. Or it could be the color and shape of their eye, the shape of their iris, or if they're wearing glasses, what is the shape of their glasses? Is there a reflection? So Shirzad shares a story in his book about a medical doctor who is one of his clients. He's an executive coach who obviously had a lot of stress being a medical doctor. And what he started doing was, within the first 10 to 15 seconds of meeting a new patient, he would focus on something intently on their appearance. And he said by doing this, he became so much more empathetic and open to what they had to say. And his patient, I should say bedside manner, I guess, if you want to call that, was so improved, and it dramatically reduced his stress. So that is an example of what you could do when you're confronted in a situation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now. Is there any other situation that maybe we did not talk about that you could see this technique working for you?
Well, I go back to the parenting thing again, but you really need a lot of patience. And, if you're going to be guiding children, or sometimes employees too, but
Right.
just on a personal level, yeah, you could use that technique for patience. I think we've all done the count to 10 thing, It's like a
Yeah.
little version of what you're demonstrating today.
It is absolutely. Actually, I am going to share my screen one more time because I forgot. I know we're almost out of time. And I promise I will be super quick. Let's see, can you see where I'm going here? Okay, let me go to here. Okay. Okay, so, oh, now why did that happen? That didn't help. Can you see? Okay, here we go. So really quickly to wrap up, because I want to be very mindful of your time. So if you found this interesting and possibly would like to know more, or you're just kind of interested in some other topics that I do with my clients, I post a lot of educational content on LinkedIn. That's my platform of choice, but I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. And I had mentioned I'm kind of overhauling my YouTube channel. So I encourage you, if you are on social media, to follow me or engage. That would be great. And then lastly, really quick, I published a book late last year, and it's From Burnout to Best Life. And it integrates my journey of overcoming burnout to a happy, healthy, fulfilled life. And it's really a holistic health and wellness book to help you to, from mindset to what you put in your body, how you move your body. And at the end of each chapter, there are reflection questions that help you identify pain points in your life that you may want to improve upon. I am proud to say that it was a best-selling book in 16 categories globally on Kindle. So I was pretty excited about that. But if you're interested in that, my link is here. Again, no hard sale at all. It may not even be remotely of interest, but you might know of somebody. So that is it. And I'm going to stop talking now because I know we're out of time. So I'll turn it over to you, Melissa.
Yes, agreed. I read the book, so thank you for being here today. I have read that, and I would encourage everyone to read that book as well. So
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. And let me stop recording.